Those of us who are remembering people who are in pain, give them that 11th invitation. Don't stop inviting. Hello, everybody, and welcome to podcast 89 of the Gordon and Cherise Show. And today, we are going to be talking about something that was very stimulated from one of our amazing people that we love from our Better Living community. It is called An Invitation for the Uninvited. And this series was started because of a discussion, some feedback that we got through our last series of podcasts that we have completed about what I wish I would have known before I married a spouse with chronic pain. Now we're going into a topic, Gordon. I don't think there is a human soul out there that could not identify with being lonely, especially through COVID. I don't care how healthy or how sick somebody is. Loneliness can be a chronic condition, can't it?
It can be a chronic condition, and dealing with other people, social contacts, social connectedness, personal loneliness, not being invited any longer into social groups or invitations to social events or even attending church or anything else, that even magnifies the loneliness that you're already dealing with.
100%. And part of the conversation that was spurred by our precious member in the Better Living community was this. I want to just title it The 11th Time.
Okay.
Because she was really hoping that we could maybe put words, a few more words, to articulate how important it is for somebody who is a friend or a family member of somebody who is in pain, whether it's physical or mental pain, that maybe that person has had too many pain storms and maybe they've turned down 10 invitations to do something, to show up at somebody's house, just to be present. Maybe they physically couldn't do it. And the pain that is increased, the chronic pain, I think, is increased when those invitations stop completely. That's she was saying that kind of in between the lines, that all of a sudden, what happens when those invitations stop completely? It just amplifies this feeling of isolation and loneliness, which I think magnifies the pain. And so her encouragement, and I just want to say thank you, Stacy, for this encouragement. It is so important for all of us to hear this. Those of us who are remembering people who are in pain, give them that 11th invitation. Don't stop inviting, even if they can't do it, because you might be surprised that they will take you up on that one invitation and they will show up. Or I want to add to this. I was thinking about it this morning as we were getting this podcast ready, that, give somebody, if you've invited somebody and they say no and they're in pain, give them the ability to show up anyway. Just tell them, if you feel better or if you do change your mind or if you want to make an appearance, you're welcome to come.
I think the best way to work through this whole paradigm is discuss an example. And we have many to discuss that we have dealt with this very issue.
Totally.
Of feeling left out.
Yes.
Feeling left out of our social groups, our friendships, certain activities. Okay? And I'd like to talk about the dynamics that actually occur in a situation.
Please.
So let's do a simple one right now.
Okay.
We're invited, okay, to a particular function. Actually, it's this evening, okay?
Right.
And it's not that Gordon doesn't want to be there, okay? It's that Gordon is measuring the level of pain he has had over this last week. Mm-hmm. So I know how I'm looking at my predicament, my particular situation with my health. I want to live the best I can. I want to be strategic in the way that we attend certain events.
And you want to support me because I'm a big part of this event.
You're a big part of this event, and this event shows more importance for you than it does for me. So there's so many different dynamics that we're dealing with now. Mm-hmm. Let's say that we didn't attend tonight. Mm-hmm. And then we were not invited to the next event. We have to understand the other people who invited us also feel rejected. They feel that spirit of rejection, just like we feel the spirit of rejection because of chronic pain. Mm-hmm. And then you feel the spirit of rejection because you didn't attend because you wanted to support me. There's a whole living dynamic that occurs.
It's true. It can be a very vicious cycle.
A very vicious cycle.
And I would just encourage the person who has extended the invitation that if they do get a no, and they don't get a huge explanation behind it, and you're aware that the people that you're inviting, there is a pain condition that's in there, don't take it personally if you get the no. I think that's one huge thing that has to be remembered. Don't take it personally, and don't stop inviting. That would be a very healthy remedy for the person who is extending the invitation.
Let's talk about the person extending the invitation.
Right.
What I find is this, even with people in our lives, okay, they look at me and they see someone who's living this transformed life. And even when I was at my most debilitated condition, mm-hmm. we still had, I would say to people, please don't give in to my pain. Don't worry, I'm going to deal with it. So what would happen in the friendships is they would still add the loads and take advantage of certain circumstances, not meaning to, completely non-intentional. But then I would feel double the load.
But I also think because you didn't want to wear this I'm in chronic pain on your forehead.
Like many people.
To get sympathy. So you're not looking for sympathy. So sometimes I think you can overcompensate to a degree because you're not looking for that sympathy that you're going to give the most back to somebody. Or you're going to pay for the most. You're going to pay for that person. You're going to do this. There's almost something in you of that generosity can become completely inflated because you're compensating at times for trying to normalize yourself.
I completely understand.
When you're really not normal. I hate to say it.
Thank you, Cherise.
I mean, I think you're extraordinary, but you're not normal.
Right.
And I mean, wait, I mean, even this week, okay?
Okay, I've opened up a can, haven't I?
Really? And
Pandora's
truly,
box? Is it coming out right now?
Wide open, baby.
Okay.
Get ready to deep dive. But, this week, it was profound what happened in one day with our huge weather pattern changes as we're going into spring in Colorado. Yes. Springtime in the Rockies means huge wind gust, huge temperature changes. It's literally snowing for 3 minutes on our deck, and then the sun comes out. And the weather did that how many times?
Six or seven times.
In one day. And you woke up the day that it was doing that the most this week, and you had all this energy that morning. But when I came home from an appointment by the afternoon, it was really, really discouraging for me. Because if we had had an invitation that day, I know that we would have had to not show up. You mentioned something and you were very, very vulnerable to me about how you felt when you woke up from your nap. You mentioned something and you were going through a deep, dark depression.
It was natural.
You woke up in so much pain, you were in depression.
Yes, I was.
And you called it what it was. I thought you were so courageous to just say, honey, because I saw this, it was like Jekyll and Hyde. You're a different person from a few hours ago. So it's hard for anybody who's extending invitations to somebody when they're not even living with that to understand how that person in pain is processing stuff, because it changes sometimes moment by moment. Hourly, what a person could do that morning, they may not be able to do that afternoon.
Right.
And there has to be grace for people.
There has to be tons of grace.
And you have, and I'm so proud of you for this, Gordon. You gave grace to yourself that day to say, I know I'm off. I had to take a nap. And I know I feel depression right now. But it's not going to overcome me. I feel it, but I'm not going to become it. That's kind of, you didn't say those words, but that's how you live.
And a lot of people in chronic pain, whether it's with medication use, whether it's activity-based, whether it's dealing with layers and layers of depression and helplessness and different things like that that happen with someone with chronic pain, regardless of the condition, they can have that flip-flop in their condition ongoing for days at a time, weeks at a time, years at a time, and that's where they feel caught in the loop. And then what happens is when they do become more vulnerable with their friends or social groups, I've also seen this happen for us. And this is where we feel uninvited. Other people try to manage our pain.
Exactly.
They try to say, I care about you enough. I'm going to manage your pain and not invite you anymore because I know you're going to be in pain.
Right. And it's so unfair because so much has already been taken away when you're hurting.
Right.
So much has been stripped. To have somebody else take that authority that only you can be the judge of. Only you can gauge your pain. And I make that critical mistake in our marriage all the time when I'm trying to judge what we can do or not based on your pain.
Audience, I want the audience to hear this. You do that.
I do it.
Because you're a caring wife.
I love you, but it goes too far. It goes too far.
Sometimes it does.
And so I get it. And that's, so imagine going to that next layer of rings beyond your immediate family and going into the friendship rings. When friends do that, it's even a double dagger. Like you don't want other people to try to manage your pain for you. You want the freedom to manage it yourself and to tell people what you can do for that day. And they have to realize what you can do for that day is for that day. It may not be for the next week. You may have so much more strength a week from now that you're on the golf course because things are more leveled out in your body. It's not going up and down like it is right now.
Correct.
So it's a wild ride, people. It is a wild ride when you're in pain. But I'll tell you, it's also a very fascinating one to learn it. And I guess we just tying it back to the loneliness factor and the loneliness of working through that, Gordon. How have you fought through that lonely factor in your life the most? Because I think that it's so critical that when people are in bed on the couch and they feel uninvited, does that mean that there's any hope for social relationships later or a life beyond what they're feeling for this day?
Cherise, what I do is this, and I hope every audience member is hearing this. Every time I measure or try to discern the metrics of how I'm doing, when I start doing things like, well, I can do this for today, and here's the weather, and I can't do this, and then I can do this, and this activity is successful, and then the additional pain, did it create clinical instability, or was it just adding to depression or fatigue, or when I'm rating it and measuring it, I might get glimpses of hope and glimpses of transformation. Mm-hmm. But what happens is I tend to withdraw. So the first thing I really do is I set aside all that analytical thinking. And so if I'm going to be objective, I want to move to a place where I can be conscious, okay? I can be aware of what's happening. But I want to pull up my subconscious thoughts. Mm-hmm. In other words, those feelings of shame and those feelings of disappointment and self-pity and social isolation and my identity without other people at times. I want to pull all those things up and address those objectively. And then what I fill my mind with is the truth. It's the truth of who we are. It's the truth of the fact that God's entire and very nature, and we've read this from another pastor, is to fully engage into the parts that are death in us.
Totally.
Especially when our lives seem completely helpless, where he then can bring life. So I always look to God's nature, and I look to his promises, which also identify as our identity as well as our purposes. So I go there for first. So the cup in me that seems empty because I've measured things out and things don't add up to success, I go to God first, and I count on his very nature. And then what happens is I get a refreshment in the cup of who I am. I have to bring those subconscious thoughts of the shame and the guilt and inadequacies and the ugliness and messiness from chronic pain. I have to bring those up and realize that's part of who I was as an old creature when the trauma started.
Wow.
And though I have the trauma now, I'm a new creation. I'm a new person. And I'm a new person in Christ with my faith. So I move to the things that bring me hope and promises and treasures that fortify my identity and give me purpose. So that allows...
so powerful, Gordon.
That's what I do first.
Yeah.
Okay. Then what I do second when it comes to social situations is that it's not only that I'm socially aware of who I am and what I can personally do, but I am also aware of what my spouse or friends or family require. See, someone in chronic pain feels like they're making the sacrifices about their pain and their pain condition. But the truth is, we still need to make sacrifices for others. We need to walk in that sacrificial love. We do not abandon that construct. So what I am able to do is to say, okay, how does this affect Cherise? How does this affect her identity if we don't show up for this, or if we don't try something new, or we don't have a new adventure, or we don't go and accept a new invitation? She's going to be uninvited. She is going to fall prey to all the chronic pain stream of negativity that I've dealt with. So how can I make sacrifices for her? So someone in chronic pain, remember this, you still have to make sacrifices, as painful it is. But be strategic.
That's powerful.
Be strategic.
Yes. You know, Gordon, thank you for sharing that. Seriously, that's putting words to a way that we have lived that, I mean, we haven't even had this discussion before this podcast started, but it's really, really true that I see you doing that, and thank you for that. And the flip side of that is, as the spouse, I have to give you the room to say yes or no, and for you to determine what sacrifice you can make for that day. Because obviously, you know, here's the guilt I carry at times is I know my husband's going to pay for this. No matter what he says yes to, he's going to pay for it. And then am I going to have to pay for it because he pays for it? Meaning, is he going to stay in bed? Is he going to be extra grumpy the next day? Is he going to take it out on me? Not even consciously, but subconsciously, because he said yes to this. And I have to have the strength to allow you the freedom. Like, you're looking out for me. Well, the point is, love is looking out for each other. So the other part of me has to let go to give you the freedom to say yes or no. And realize that I can't pay the price for your yes, just like I can't pay the price for your no.
That's true.
And it's really hard sometimes because because you even rally so much for me and try to be, so on point with me, that you have to have the vulnerability in your life to let your guard down enough to go into that inner place that you were talking about, to get that refreshing.
And we've established this over the years. When I say, here's the boundary, Cherise, I am at my max.
I have to listen.
Okay? I'm at my max. And when you listen, it's not a time to freak out. It's not a time to let fear and anxiety come into who you are, on the inside of who you are. It's just a boundary. It's kind of like if we put our finger on the burner of a stove. It's a boundary. That's going to burn. Don't do that. So it's a boundary within that person with chronic pain who says, I can't really move another step forward, or I'm going to move into a very vulnerable and unstable and more than just a fragile condition with my health.
Totally.
I'm going to slip backwards for a few weeks, and I really don't want to right now.
Totally.
Okay? So those boundaries also have to be honored.
So all of this that we're talking about right now is almost the backstory to the invitation. Like all these things that are going around that person in chronic pain and the spouse who's waiting to say to RSVP to an invitation, or all of these things are kind of the backstory. And the truth is, there is still social isolation and loneliness that happens when you're in pain. It's just part of it.
It's part of it. And I think we're going to cover some of that in the next podcast,
I
because
do too.
All of our notes that we have right now,
We
Cherise,
haven't gone through one thing.
we haven't even really started. So the next one is going to be extremely impactful with step by step. And I've given some step by step today.
You have.
Instructions or guidelines to walk through some things. But I wanted to share this. When you think about social relationships, the deeper ones that are really ingrained in love, and they're your friends and your family and your spouses and partners. Okay, I'm thinking of those relationships right now. Okay, there's two things that have to be honored in those relationships. Number one is trust. And number two is freedom. A freedom to create and express. So what happens in these relationships with trust? And we have invitations that are blown off, and then people trying to manage your pain. And trust is the variable that's being tossed around like a ping pong ball, back and forth. So when I mentioned earlier, when I go inward, I go to that place where I trust God. I trust Him so much because I've had years and years and years and years of fellowship with Him. Now, for the people that are listening that have only 10 hours of fellowship with Him, I encourage you right now, put the time in. Put the time in with the person and a God, a King of Kings, that you can learn to trust more than anything else in your life, including your own marriage.
That's right.
Okay?
That's right.
That's number one. And that trust issue is something, it says in Scripture that we're not supposed to trust man, but we're supposed to have trustworthy relationships. Okay? And we're all going to be at fault in this chronic pain pool. So let's give everyone grace. Let's give them a free pass of forgiveness of messing up. But it has to be strongly communicated. It cannot be a situation where we sweep every issue under the carpet and pretend.
Right.
We can't do that when we're struggling with loneliness and misinterpretation of pain in relationships. We have to be transparent and open. So that's the best way to create trust, is when you can start hearing, when you're listening to someone else give their view and perspective. And then when as they volley back to you, you can share the different things. And then as you're iron sharpening iron and scraping, and then trust with the Heavenly Father is the greatest, what He says is this: the power in me, where you're drawn from the cross to me, And I draw you away from your wandering ways and from your relationships that are so messy and so miserable because of chronic pain. I'm going to turn around and I'm going to make those better.
Absolutely.
I'm going to do that. So as you're sharing back and forth, then what happens is you can start laughing at a few things. You can start chuckling at a few things. Forgiveness becomes easier. It doesn't have to be this large, dramatic thing where our relationship now has been broken for 20 years because of chronic pain. No. With people with chronic pain, start forgiving freely with all these social relationships and all these obligations or all these open invitations for something wonderful. Start forgiving freely.
Gordon, that is beautiful and something I'm taking to heart as you're saying it.
Okay? And so the freedom, okay? The freedom that we have in these social relationships is that freedom to share. And then you don't even realize it. You think you're just sharing your problems. And then the other person is sharing their side of the problem because of chronic pain or this elephant in the room or this brokenness that's between you. You're going to see something that happens. Here's the power of God. You're sharing your things and it's all your messy stuff. But when you bring to the surface those subconscious thoughts and you bring them up and that becomes the conversation, you start sharing with the wisdom that God puts in you, and you can comfort anyone in any affliction.
Amen.
So what you think you own, okay, it could also be shared with other people, and then there's victory and overcoming those things that douse good social friendships and relationships.
If anything good has come out of your pain, I think that it has made you ultimately a person who people look for encouragement and comfort.
That's true.
And you are amazing in that way. And you've allowed pain not to make you the victim. But part of slaying that pain monster is finding out how your purpose is actually greater through your pain than without it. It's like Christ. He chose the layers of flesh. He didn't have to, but he chose it to identify with us because he is ahead of us. He already went before us in ultimate suffering, and he's with us in ours.
That's true. Let's move to the thought of the day to finish this up. And we're going to have another podcast on this particular topic.
Such a good topic. Okay, so my thought today is this. As we've been talking, it's been brewing in me as a reminder for those of us who feel uninvited. As Gordon had given the incredible advice to go inward first. As you go inward, discover this. The God is no longer a visitation God like he was in the Old Testament. He is a habitation God.
Yes.
So you're not communing alone when you go inward. We're not saying go inward and find this complete void of nothing. When you go inward, you're going to find the very embrace of the love of Christ in you. And that embrace will not leave you. That divine embrace will carry you through the deepest parts of your depression, through your loneliness, through the isolation that you feel like it's impossible to overcome. Christ already overcame isolation. He overcame hell for you. He loves you. He wants you. He's going to hold you, and he is going to fill you with a companionship that no human being can meet. You and I can't even meet that for each other, Gordon. Christ meets it in both of us. And then what flows out of that can come and connect with us in our marriage. But it always does start on that inside with a God who inhabits you and loves you. Doesn't inhabit to torment you, but to give you hope and a future even in your pain.
Very good. My thought is related to our friend Stacy. And I would say this to her. And she knows a lot of these things. In fact, a lot of our audience understands the depth of suffering, and they have a depth of faith, and they understand the intimacy with Christ. That's what pain does to us as we're being sanctified. So that's the preface. The encouragement for the Stacys, for the other Gordon and Cherises, for the audience member who doesn't have a name out there. If you've gotten the 11th invitation, make it your first. Don't think of it as your 11th. Look at it as your first. Take some of what we've said and bring it to heart and apply it to your lives. I want to encourage you this. No one is a 100% full expert about chronic pain or chronic suffering other than Jesus Christ.
That's right.
Nobody on this planet. So nobody really understands the efforts that you're making to make a comeback or to be part of a group again, and vice versa. They don't know how to bring you in and integrate you within their circles anymore. So don't take that misunderstanding about the truth that exists in you, and don't go on a wayward path. And don't put your head down and be discouraged any longer.
Good.
Make the next invitation, or if you're the person inviting, make it a first-time event with clear eyes.
Beautiful, Gordon.
So that's our podcast for today.
Yes.
Cherise, I'm going to go ahead and say this because I've been working on this. Okay. Each one of these podcasts has podcast highlights. So every 2 to 3 or maybe up to 5-minute clips. And there's like 8 to 10, and you can find those on YouTube. And we're finding on our Facebook page and even the Better Living community page that we get more people looking in at the 3-minute videos than our long 30 to 35-minute video. So that 30 to 35-minute video is available in 2 places. Number 1, our website, gordonandcherise.com. But number 2 is YouTube. So what we're going to do is do this.
Can I interject?
Please do.
It's also on Apple and Spotify and...
But we're making, Cherise, what we're making is this. We're making the plea for YouTube.
Right. Absolutely.
Okay. And the plea for YouTube is this. The more we're not getting the subscribers, they're watching it all on Facebook, but less are watching the fullness of the content. We want to help people as much as possible. So we're going to have 3 or potentially 4 clips during the week that you'll see on our Facebook page that will show you exactly glimpses of what our podcast was about. And then you can go to YouTube. There's going to be a link to send you to YouTube to watch the whole thing and to still be part of the group.
Absolutely. And the point is, subscribe to YouTube.
Yes.
We need to raise those subscriptions up. We hope to get 1,000 subscribers here soon.
Right.
For YouTube. And it makes a difference to help just propel the community forward.
And to send the seed out to more people.
That's right.
Okay.
So thanks for your support of that. That's how you can give back to us right now.
Absolutely. And thank you very much. And Cherise, I like what you're wearing today.
Thank you. Well, you look handsome yourself.
And we'll see you next week.
We'll see you next time. Thank you.